Uh, Welcome to another episode of Shenanigans with Shoop and
Shaool, buddy.
Shaool Buddy. That's the closest we're going to get to a nickname. I am Mr. Shoop York Giant, ready to talk about my Giants and the rest of the NFC East. It wasn't too long ago when the NFC East was the joke of the NFL. Fortunes turned last year, and they had four really solid teams in that division. So we'll start off with the defending NFC champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. And oh boy, they were a surprise to a lot of the NFL last year. I mean, if you had watched my show with Chuck last year, you would have known that I was high on the Eagles from the beginning. But I don't think I would have ever expected the Eagles to be the number one seed. Now, you got a lot of guys coming back. You have some departures, but the same core group with possibly now an even more explosive offense with another year of Jalen Hurts and continuity with his guys. So what are the expectations for the Eagles this year? Super Bowl or bust?
No, I mean, I think they'll go deep in the playoffs and that will be normal. And then it's, once you get there to the end, I mean, I think their defense has gotten better in certain aspects and a little bit questionable in others. It's really going to come up to the new defensive coordinator. I think we all know what's on the offense there. They got three amazing pass catchers, two wide receivers and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. And then that tight end who's awesome, Go Dirt or whatever his name is.
Mm,
And so we know adding, I like the addition of DeAndre Swift. I think that team already has a lot of good pass catching running backs. He'll fit right in, taking over for Miles Sanders. So I'm not really worried about their offense. I like Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's got the best deep ball, maybe, but I think Nick Sirianni gets the best out of him. It's really going to come down to the defense if they can hold up. They got that new coach, 39-year-old Sean Desani. They got rid of they're turning over safeties. This guy has, I know from just watching Chicago a little bit and Roquan Smith coming to the Ravens, he does a lot with two high safety looks and does a lot of like disguising with that. And now they've, got rid of two of their safeties in Epps and Gardner Johnson and replacing it with potentially a rookie playing major minutes at safety. I'm not a huge fan of like saying the safety position is that determination of a defense, but mix that with a lot of new people on the defensive line, getting a lot of those young guys that they picked a while ago in this year, giving them some real rotational minutes, if not starter minutes. I would say, we're going to see game one with playing the New England Patriots if they're legit. I mean, I think it'll be interesting. It's going to be a fun year for them.
yeah, well, you're right. Safety, a rookie safety stepping in, on a Super Bowl team from the previous year. It's big shoes to fill. But I marvel at the value that the Eagles got in this draft. They did have two first round picks, so they had a bit of an advantage. Yet they got two guys who were one guy, potential top 5 pick that they got at 10th overall in Jalen Carter. And then they get Nolan Smith, who could have easily gone in the top 10. They get him at number 30. So that right there replaces two guys they lost in the offseason in Robert Quinn and Javon Hargrave. And they lost some linebackers and safeties as well. But this team is very deep on both sides of the ball. And they add a couple of running backs to mix and match, although albeit both running backs are very awfully injured, which is why both teams felt free to let them go. So we'll see if they can hold up throughout the season. But it's really going to be the same old crew going on. And looking at the rest of the NFC, you got the 49ers in the NFC West, who gave the Eagles a challenge before Purdy hurt his arm. I don't see a ton standing in the Eagles' way. But one thing to note is that they lost both their offensive and defensive coordinator as head coaches in the offseason. I'm sure they have capable coaches on the rest of their staff, but it's definitely going to be an adjustment. and it might take there might be some growing pains a little bit. We might not see that blazing hot start that we saw last year.
Yeah, and they're gonna have a really hard finish, man. After week 11, after their bye week, I know everybody's like, "Oh, coming back from a bye week." They got Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, Seattle. I mean, and then still New York. I mean, they really end out their season tough, and then hopefully they have that hot start. But if they don't, they got a tough road at the end to make up for it. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, good point on that. They can't take any games for granted there. So let's switch to a different team in the NFC East, and we're going to move on to the Dallas Cowboys, who once again had another embarrassing playoff finish. And this time it might have been the funniest of all the playoff finishes, somehow beating out, missing the spike with 0 seconds to go, which happened against the 49ers the previous year. Well, this year they tried some Hail Mary play with Zeke blocking at center. He gets absolutely destroyed, and then an immediate hospital pass to end their season. It's the same old story at the Cowboys. They put together
How about them Cowboys?
right. The it's insane how the Buffalo Bills and like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Raiders and the Rams, all these teams have had more championship game appearances than the Cowboys in the last 20 years. The Cowboys haven't been to an NFC championship game since what, 1995? That's unbelievable. Is there any sign that this Cowboys team could finally get over that hump and make it to the promised land this year?
Nope. They're the same old Cowboys. I mean, I don't see any big changes that are huge. I mean, they need to really embrace their defensive identity, in my opinion. And they got a great trio of wide receivers, but I don't know what they're gonna do at tight end. And I mean, I wasn't a Zeke fan, and I think that was a great, addition by subtraction. But I just don't know who's really going to rise up if they want to do that same ground and pound. I mean, I like Pollard. He had a great year, but they didn't go and get like two other running backs. I mean, at least Philly got. I like Deuce Vaughn, as a third option running back. I really don't know who's going to come out, and maybe I didn't do enough research to see their practice squad guys, but I just don't. They don't do that. They're not a team that you see practice squad, you know, type of players that are going to get big minutes and big plays. They'll have some practice squad offensive lineman that works out, or they'll have some practice squad defensive like linebacker that makes this, puts in some reps. But do they really have some superstar, edge rusher, like a lot of these teams that need that, and they just don't seem to be that deep. I mean, a person who always last year surprised you is Cooper Rush, and you don't want your backup having, a 75% win ratio or whatever for going 4-1 and your starter 8-4. And so, I mean, that was really good for them, but that's not what you want. And so I think I'm not a huge fan of Mike McCarthy. I don't really think this team did much besides cut some dead weight. And I don't see anything else to really jump them up. I do still think that this division is top loaded with the Eagles. I think there's going to be a lot of crazy, weird losses between the Giants, Cowboys, and Commanders. And so I wonder, I think this whole division takes a step back. Like you said in the beginning, that it used to be an embarrassment and now it's coming back. I remember when it used to be talked about the best division in football, and then it took a step back. And I think it's kind of went high, low, and now back to the middle, the whole division. And I think you're going to see it's a good division. I'm not saying it's a weak division. I just think it's similar to my AFC like North and how they eat each other alive.
Well, yeah. So one minor note, the NFC East hasn't had a repeat champion since the Eagles did it 4 years in a row from 2001 to 2004. So there hasn't been a repeat champion in almost 20 years. It might come to an end this year. We'll see about that. But going off the Cowboys, what the Cowboys' strength is, and I think this is a big omission by you. I'm going to call you out for it, saying they don't have a superstar pass rusher. They may have the best pass rusher in the entire league.
I'm saying that they don't have a lot of these teams, Ravens or somebody has a undrafted rookie come out as a pass rusher that makes like 5 or 6 sacks. I was not me. Parsons could I have him as actually. You always ask me like, what's the surprise or what's your big thing? I think he could lead the NFL in sacks this year. I think it could definitely be the defensive MVP. So I meant to say that they don't have that like star position, whether it's running back, wide receiver, or even like a edge rusher that they can pick off their practice squad, undrafted rookies. I mean, what undrafted rookie that plays a star position have you seen them like do? That's all I'm saying.
Well, okay, so that's valid, but the strength of this team, going off that, so the strength of this team is their pass rush. That is what got them to where they were last year. They were absurd on defense. The pressure that they generated game after game was a sight to see, but they needed it because, for one, you mentioned Mike McCarthy. He was a bad hire from the get-go. Just rode years and years of Aaron Rodgers carrying him to the playoffs, and he really didn't do much of Aaron Rodgers anyway. His play calling is predictable. I mean, you saw the baffling decisions that he's made in the playoffs the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And he's not the only problem though. Dak Prescott, great story. Came out of the 4th round, came in right away as a rookie and has impressed. Stand-up guy, But the problem with Prescott is he's one of those guys that needs everything around him to succeed, but he's paid like one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. He rode the success of a very talented offensive line for years and years. That offensive line is getting old now. Tyron Smith, he's missed an astonishing, he's missed over 50% of games the last 3 years after being one of the best left tackles in the year for quite some time. And Zach Martin in the interior, who's been one of the best guards in the NFL, will probably be a Hall of Famer one day. He's getting up there in age too. Who knows if he starts to decline? So you got potential offensive line issues. I love Pollard, and I think he's going to unleash this year. But they did lose their tight end Dalton Schultz. They're going to have to replace production at that position. I really think the Cowboys will be fine, but there's zero to convince me that they're going to do any better than they were last year. In fact, I think they're going to pretty much end up in the same place, where maybe they'll get the 5th seed and they'll beat up on whatever weak team comes out of the NFC South and then get their ass handed to them by whoever the 1 seed is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on Prescott. I've been saying for a while to my Cowboy friends, fans that are friends of mine, that Prescott's like a system quarterback, or has been helped by an offensive coordinator that gives them chunks in the middle of the field. And then last year, they all kind of find they've been telling me he crushes during the pressure. He doesn't have a good long ball. I mean, they've been have all these specific things that, I mean, they shit on him every second that they can, Cowboys fans. And then when Cooper Rush did what he did, like, there's a system quarterback. There's a guy who does with this. And they all kind of were like, it was just so funny to listen to them. They're so beaten down by all these years of just 10 and 11 wins and mediocrity. And they find a new way all the time, like you said, just to finish with that same record and right on the cusp of like sneaking into the playoffs, or right of disappointment of just losing at the end of the season. And I think that is also with ownership. He just wants to put players on the field and butts in the seats, and it doesn't really have cohesiveness and depth. And I don't know. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, bottom line, Cowboys are never going to be relevant unless they get a coach who's got an offensive mind that can get more out of Dak Prescott, especially with the O-line aging. But enough about the Dallas Cowboys. Let's talk about the New York Giants. Finally made the playoffs, turned the entire franchise around. Brian Dable is a god among New York fans. Daniel Jones, he got Daniel Jones paid, bro. He got Daniel Jones paid. That's remarkable on its own. So now they're
going. You say that like it's a good thing.
It's a good thing for Daniel Jones. Absolutely.
But what about Giants fans? It's a good thing for a Giants fan that he got paid.
Well, we'll hold on. We'll talk about Daniel Jones in a second. But we're going into year 2 of Brian Dable era, there's some questions that still haven't been answered this offseason. And that main one is Saquon Barkley. He got the franchise tag like a lot of running backs. He was kind of disrespected, to say, with the price tag, but it's clear that NFL teams don't value or they don't value running backs like they used to. But Saquon might be, maybe he's a little different. Is he? What do you think?
When it comes to running back or who you're going to pick your star position, great. I think Saquon's awesome. Don't get me wrong. Is he injury prone? Nobody really knows, But at the same time, they saved a shit ton of money on the Daniel Jones deal. To be honest with you, they're not paying a top end quarterback. They're not paying a number one wide receiver. I don't understand either. I think they know something that fans and everybody else doesn't, because they're not paying a number one wide receiver. They're not paying a top end quarterback money. They're not who is like has the out of crazy contract in this era of people getting paid. The next guy keeps getting paid more. The next guy keeps getting paid more. And so they must know something that they're not committed to. But at the same time, who do they get to really like any new faces? I mean, you know better than I do, but I just don't think they got anybody. If you're going to pick a running back in the first round, you still need to pick other running backs, or do something at the running back position, or you got to pay the man. And so I think he's a great face of the franchise. I think you can come up with something, and that he runs awesome. He runs with his heart, but there's something in that front office. And I think it's silly to say you don't pay running backs at least something. I mean, it's a joke what they want to pay him. I think he's not an idiot. He knows that running backs don't get the most, but at the same time, I don't know, man. I think they don't have anything else. They don't have anybody else.
You hit the nail on the head there. Listen, this is one of those weird instances right now. So the NFL, the teams have all leverage against running backs. But in this case, the Giants have no leverage. Saquon is their offense. What they did this offseason, they acquired a couple more mediocre wide receivers to add to an already very mediocre wide receiver core. They go out and acquire Darren Waller, but he's getting up there in age. He's not going to be that bona fide number one guy. He will help out Daniel Jones.
How many touchdowns is Dalen Waller going to score? I love Dalen Waller. I remember when he was on the Ravens, and I watched him on the Raiders, and I think he's fast, and I think he catches some balls, but he's not a touchdown machine. He's not a first down machine. He gets you 5 or 6 good first downs a game, basically. And it'll be great for Daniel Jones. It will help Daniel Jones and justify his contract.
If he stays healthy.
If Daniel Waller stays healthy. But you go out and get, Paris Campbell and Jamison Crowder. I mean, what are these guys? They're barely possession receivers. There's some sideline catches that I've seen them do. None of them are going to really take over the topper. And if they do, it's because they got forgotten, not because they're like this speed demon that everybody's scared of. Nobody's adjusting their whole system to Crowder anymore. I mean, he was always a speed demon on, you know what I'm saying? Nobody's like getting fooled by him running down the field and it's going to be all playing defense to him. They have nothing to offer, in my opinion, on offense except for Barkley. And I like Barkley. And there's no way Barkley's asking for a 5-year deal. He wants 3 years guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, he's a stand-up guy. He's great for the franchise. He puts butts in seats, so you're not going to let him not play. And if he doesn't play, that hurts that offense so bad. I mean, they got 4th-round rookie Eric Gray, but he's not going to transform the offense like Saquon does. They need Saquon. They need to get him a long-term deal just to make the guy happy in this situation. And they have the cap room to do it. They didn't go crazy. They have cap space still with the Daniel Jones signing that they made. And they're not spending because we thought that they would spend the money to, keep Saquon long-term. They're not doing that. So they absolutely need to do that. Let's go into one positive, though, for the Giants this year, which they might have. If Evan Neal takes that next step that we expect him to, top 10 pick last year, they could have one of the best offensive lines in the league. So it might not matter all that much if his wide receivers, Daniel Jones, that is, his wide receivers aren't all that great. if he's got all the time in the world to protect him, that's what, besides the coaching, that's what helped Daniel Jones take that next step last year. Elite blocking. Andrew Thomas, best left tackle in the league. Interior is pretty good. They drafted a center that should take over pretty quickly. So that's what a lot of the success for the Giants is going to be based off this year. Can that offensive line take that next step that we expect it to?
And speaking on that, I mean, then you should also, for your running back, it's kind of similar to the Cowboys model that have a great offensive line, and Prescott, throws the ball all over the field, but can't get into the end zone because he's not elite. Daniel Jones isn't elite, and Daniel Jones doesn't have these elite pass catchers to get, a crazy catch in the end zone or just run into the end zone and with their blazing speed. So now you need Barkley more and more when you get down there in the red zone and you need to get 4 yards, or you need to get 2 to 4 yards, you got to have the threat of a run and you got to commit to it. And they're not committing to Barkley, and they're not committing to have a stable of running backs behind him if they're not going to commit to him. Because if they're not going to commit to him, where's everybody else? Where's their other gadget running back, Swiss Army knife, something to do something if Barkley goes down or they're not going to pay him? They just, what are they going to do when the field shortens in the red zone? Just because you have a great offensive line, if you don't have 2 or 3 running backs that can do something, or 2 or 3 really good pass catchers, whether it's wide receiver or tight end, I just think they're a 9-8-9 win season without something miraculously happening. I know they're your boys, but I think they have a really tough schedule coming into this year.
They do.
I think that it's not easy at any point. They have a couple like games sprinkled in, but they end the year. The last 2 out of the last 3 games is at Philly, then versus the Rams, which is not a great thing, but then with Philly again back home. And I just think that if they're going into that limping, I don't know. They have I always like a late bye week, week 13 bye week. Some people like early ones. I like late ones just because it kind of just gets everybody some time to rest, and always going into a bye week to a game, and it's a Monday night game, so they'll have even a longer bye week. They're going into a Monday night game versus Green Bay, and who knows what Green Bay is. So I think, listen, they could eke out 10 wins and be where they were last year. I just don't see it any better than last year.
Yeah, I rank the Giants as maybe the most middle of the pack team in the NFL, with the questions on offense and plenty of questions on defense too. They signed Bobby Okereke to help with the linebacking core, but the linebacking core is still pretty weak. Now, the defensive line has plenty of talent. Dexter Lawrence, one of the best D tackles in the NFL. Leonard Williams, he's produced here and there on his contract, but he has potential to produce big. Can Kayvon Thibodeau take that next step up? It's really going to come down to, can these young corners for the Giants develop? They have Adoree Jackson, but he's better served as a nickel corner. And then they got young guys. They just drafted Deonte Banks, and they got a 3rd-round rookie last year, or now 2nd-year guy, Cordell Flott. One of them's going to have to step up and provide some good coverage, or teams are going to be throwing all over them.
It's not going to be Banks. I watched him at Maryland. He's good. He gets deflections, but be honest with you, in college, deflections are happening because the style of play, ball's a little bit slower. Everything's a little bit slower. It's easier to get your hands on. He's not an INT guy. He's fast, but he's not, I don't want to say quick. He's not like a jerky, torquey type of like a cornerback. And I was surprised where he got picked. Do I think he's a good kid? Do I think he had 1 injury season at Maryland, which, is pretty normal in college. And then he didn't use his red shirt and he just came out. And I think he did really well in the combine, but I watched every game he played. And he got a lot of time as a rookie. I mean, he got a lot of time as a freshman, and not as a freshman. Don't get me wrong. He didn't start like all their games, but they definitely, Maryland has to play all their players. And if you know what I mean, they don't have a lot of good players. They have a lot of people who need to sit the bench. And so as a freshman, I remember he could keep up with players. He could keep up with his speed and stuff, but he's not. Just so you know, as a Giants, I'm warning you, he's not going to be first year lockdown on an island, and you're going to be lucky in a zone system if he doesn't get beat because the ball just comes out so much quicker in the NFL. And it's just timing wise, it's just hard for a cornerback.
Definitely not. I think he'll get. I think teams will try to do double moves on him, try to expose him a little bit. But we're looking for development more than anything. And we got some talented safeties in the back. Xavier McKinney, he hasn't really lived up to that second round billing that he had. Can he take the next step up? But last point on the Giants, because we got another team to get to. But Brian Dable, I think Brian Dable has instilled an unbelievable amount of confidence in Giants fans going forward. The hustle that he gets out of these guys and energy that you see on the field. Having Dable as the coach on the sidelines makes Giants fans believe. So that's one reason for optimism. And hell,
he was with Buffalo, right?
Yeah, and
yeah, I remember.
And with the NFC this year, like they might be mediocre, but mediocre could get you a 7 seed, and then who knows what happens from there.
Yeah. Speaking
of mediocre, maybe the most mediocre franchise in the NFL at the moment.
Lower than mediocre. What's the word? Lower than mediocre.
What do you call it when there's been poop sitting there in the toilet for like 3, 4, 5 hours, and it's just got this weird looking color? Well,
that's not mediocre, bud.
That color is the Washington Commanders, whatever that color is. And that's exactly what rained down on fans once from their sewer systems inside the stadium because of how poorly run this franchise is. And not just off the field. Off the field has been documented very much, and we can talk about that all day, but on the field, the product has been the same year after year. And the problem with the Commanders year after year, zero continuity at quarterback. I can't tell you how many guys have gone through in the last decade. And now they're going with slinging Sammy Howell as their new face of the franchise. What are your expectations for Mr. Sam Howell?
I mean, settling is my word of choice here. I mean, this is like the most settling girlfriend I've ever heard of. Bringing her around. I would almost be embarrassed bringing that girl around my family. I don't know what you do. I mean, it's just, and then you got Jacoby Brissett behind there, and you kind of like looking around. It's like looking at your little brother. Sorry, I know you're my little brother-in-law, but like you're like he brought around this girl and she's he's settling for her, and just the next in line or the next in line or the previous one is just as bad, and the next one's going to be just as bad. And like I don't know what Riverboat Captain Riviera is thinking over here. The person who I feel bad for, I don't even feel is Eric Benamy. That's like the story of the Skins this year is. He jumped ship for what, man? I don't know what he was thinking. Doing a lateral move from Kansas City offensive coordinator to the Commanders offensive coordinator. You knew they were up for sale. You knew all their front office issues. You knew Riviera might not be there any year. And, Chase Young, another player that just has, why would he want to play? How do you know if Chase Young is even that hurt? I think sometimes some of these superstars don't even want to play, and I don't blame them, And so this whole team, I don't even think it's about Sam Howell. I don't even know what to think of. And I'm a closet Redskins fan, being here in Maryland, growing up, watching the Skins, Mark Rippon, all the famous Art Monk, everybody, their list is star-studded when I was growing up in my early years and teens. And it's been 20 some years. I feel like, it's just sad, dude. And they could still win 8 games. This division is so wacky. They won 8 games last year. I loved Heineke last year. I thought they should just embrace Heineke. He was somebody to build around. There was an idea, an identity with him. That he spoke well in press conferences. He had a chip on his shoulder. He's like the Kirk Cousins equivalent, in my opinion. Was perfect equivalent there. They had Kirk Cousins. They knew what they had in Kirk Cousins. They let him go. They got another Kirk Cousins, and they just traded him for what?
Nothing. Now, to play devil's advocate here, Sam Howell did have one good Week 18 game, which he was very impressive in that showing. He used his legs, he used his arm, and he made that offense a lot more explosive than they were the entire season. So there is that little glimmer of hope, but there are a lot of problems with the team, and it starts with the offensive line, which they lost a couple starters in the off season, and it's not going to be good protection for Howell. He's going to have to overcome that. And then on the defensive side, you lose Cole Holcomb, your best linebacker, leaving you with nothing at the position. And then
Well, they got Cody Barton.
yeah, but he's not like, he could take that next step this year, but he's not quite that Pro Bowl player yet.
Yeah.
At corner, they're abused at corner last year. Now they did draft Emmanuel Forbes, who's really tiny Devontae Smith like body type guy, but he's got really good ball instincts. Maybe he could develop well this year, but rookie corners, they're hit or miss, and a lot more times they're missing their first season. So expect more pains on that side of the ball. But I just have no faith in this franchise. Period. They just never really seem to get it right. Period. And I don't think the fans are totally behind them. With the whole ownership situation, that is going to be a big distraction this year for sure. And they have some talented receivers, but is it going to be enough to compete with the rest of the division? I think that they're just outnumbered in terms of defense and offense for the rest of the division teams. Unless the Giants don't sign Saquon, then they might be even with the Giants. But they're kind of just outmatched.
No, Giants have an identity. Giants have built around. That's what I was getting with the Buffalo comment. Is that he comes from that DeVolt, whatever his name, comes from that idea and that place. And I think Commanders, new ownership you're gonna see a lot. And I think they're more of a 4-win team than an 8-win team, let's say.
Definitely.
But let's say they get the 8 wins, it's gonna be because of Ben-Ami and Howe and not Rivera. And I could still see Rivera getting cut on Black Monday. I mean, I just don't see him anyway. And then Ben-Ami getting the bump up to head coach. I mean, I could see something like that to keep some continuity if they did something good. But I think this team is in such disarray, from the sale we're going to go through now to everything, to coach just being dead man walking, to star players not wanting to play, to I don't know. I mean, it's just sad. To the bad name. That's an awful name. Commanders, awful name.
Skins is more fun to say. I will admit that. I don't care if that's controversial or not. So let's see. We got 5 minutes left. So let's go into some bold predictions. First of all, let's talk about where you think we'll end up. Do you think last year it was Eagles, Giants, Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, Washington? Do we see the same order this year?
I do. I definitely do. I think it's cream at the top, and the rest of them you could switch Giants and Eagles. I mean, Giants and Cowboys, but I think the Eagles are head and shoulders above everybody. To be honest, I think they bringing back 4 starters on the defensive line. I mean, on the offensive line, I think they just have too much continuity going and too much star power. And then I think it's just, always comes down to injuries and some wild plays. And then the Commanders are just out to lunch. So,
yeah, I think that order makes a ton of sense. The Eagles just, the concern with the Eagles was how many free agents they had. They had to sign everyone. And it was kind of like the Buccaneers a couple of years back, where they had a ton of free agents and they signed everybody. The Eagles have that continuity going, and with a lack of real threats in the NFC, the Eagles should roll through, win the division again, breaking that 20-year streak of no repeat winners. Cowboys will get 10 wins again and be bounced in the first round. Giants might get into playoffs, and Washington fans will be sad again. Bold prediction. Tony Pollard will lead the league in scrimmage yards. rushing and receiving among running backs.
Wow.
He's got the full workload this year. No Zeke to hold him back. They've got like practice squad level guys backing him up. They signed Ronald Jones. What is he gonna do? He's basically washed at this point. Pollard is explosive. He can go distance anytime he touches the ball. He's never had that opportunity to get the full workload. And with potential protection issues, you could see a lot more dump offs and a lot more plays for Pollard in space. I love Pollard to have a huge, huge season.
Good fantasy pick. I already said, kind of alluded to my one Parsons linebacker for the Cowboys to lead the NFL in sacks. My other bold prediction is that the Giants, I'm sorry, but wheels fall off the car. I think they are just still fragile enough to be an injury wave just falling apart. I don't think they're going to be as bad as the Commanders. I mean, I think the Commanders are going to be dog shit. They're going to be 4 wins if lucky, maybe 5. But I think the Giants haven't had back-to-back 9-win seasons since 2011, 2012, and it takes a lot to turn the boat. And I'm not saying I don't like the Giants and where they're headed and their identity. I just think that, again, I watched Lamar Jackson, Kyrie Irving, a lot of these guys, and I don't blame them for not wanting to play all the time. I mean, they're totally different scenarios, but when you don't have a contract, I don't see why Barkley is going to put his body out there. Daniel Jones, I think
Mm-hmm.
he's, great inside the 20s, but I just don't see him leading the pack, and I don't know if giving him a contract is going to make him a superstar. They didn't even give him a superstar contract. So what's going to make him different and win 9 games the same or win more? So I think they drop back, the Commanders drop back, and Parsons is the sack leader for the Cowboys, and that's 1 and 2.
Yeah. And one more bold prediction to top things off. I think the Eagles. So I did say that they are the cream of the crop at NFC, but I don't think they make the Super Bowl this year. But I won't reveal my team. So I will reveal my team later. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed this episode, please make sure to follow us on Spotify, subscribe to us on YouTube, and make sure to check out our content because we got 3 more divisions to go. NFL season is coming around the corner, just a couple months away. But anyway, for now, I am Shoop.
I'm Shaool.
And we'll see you for some more shenanigans later.
Later.